This is going to be a fun topic to talk about. The pros and cons of selling new versus used or used versus new on Amazon FBA. There's a lot of people who talk about you should only sell items as used, or why aren't you selling items as new? Those profit margins are through the roof. So I'm going to talk about some of the risks, some of the rewards, some of the pros, some of the cons. And again, guys, I'm just a guy on the internet who's selling $30,000 a month. I'm not a multi-millionaire Amazon seller. I have been selling for 8 years, but I'm just gonna share my experience, what I've heard from my mentors, what I've experienced based on my sales, and why I do what I do in my business model. So over the last 30 days, I've done 30,000 in sales, profit margins around 35-40%. I mostly buy items from thrift stores. I do a lot of eBay to Amazon flips, Facebook Marketplace, Mercari sourcing to flip on Amazon. I'm learning a lot about wholesale right now. But let's get into this topic. Let's talk about some of the pros and cons to selling new versus used. So when it comes to profit margin and ROI, I found from my experience, you're gonna make a lot more money selling your items as new. You know, I sell a lot of DVDs, CDs, board games, and there's a big difference between a used DVD price, which might be $6 or $7, and a new DVD, which could be 70 or 80. And the same thing applies for board games. I mean, take a look at that old traditional Pictionary board game from the 90s. Used, that only might be 15 to 17 bucks. New, Q4, I sell those things for 80, 90, $100. So you'll definitely sell items for a lot more money selling them new versus used. Now let's talk about the reason why a lot of people won't sell items as new on Amazon, and that's IP complaints. These are intellectual property complaints. And a lot of people are worried that Amazon is going to reach out and have them want to verify chain of custody. So what that means is, and this is kind of like a gray area, some people say it's against terms of service, some people say it's not. I really do overall think it is a gray area, but there are times where you could be selling an item and maybe you get an inauthentic claim, or possibly you get a intellectual property claim. And the way that you're able to get this removed off of your account is either through a plan of action or a plan of action and showing chain of custody, which is an invoice. They want to see that you purchased the item from a trustworthy supplier. Now, if you're doing what I'm doing, buying items from eBay and flipping it on Amazon, they ain't going to accept that. 100% no. If you're going to thrift stores, if you're buying anything from a garage sale, an auction, a flea market, it doesn't even matter if it's new or used, but people, they say that you have a higher risk of getting IP complaints if it's new versus used. I haven't seen this to be true. There are a lot of my mentors who I trust, and they say that new is a bigger risk. Ultimately, one of my really close friends who's a seven-figure seller, he says, hey, listen, if you do get called out, if Russian roulette plays a role and that bullet's coming for you and they want to see it, you're probably gonna get in trouble to some extent, depending on how old your account is. If you have a brand new account, you could get suspended or kicked off. I have plenty of friends of mine who are doing 50 to 100K a month, and they've gotten over 10 IP complaints, and they weren't able to prove the invoice, and they've been selling for 3, 4, 5 years since that. I actually have friends of mine who, I won't name his name, but he was over at the Connecticut thrifting meetup, and he was showing me his account, and his account's been in the yellow, he said, for like 5 years, where it says like at risk of being deactivated. And he says it's been there for like 5 years and nothing's ever happened. I don't know if he's gotten counterfeit claims or IPs or what the case is. I'm not saying this is good practice, so don't take this as like gospel, like, oh, I'm gonna just go get IP complaints and sell new. Like, know your risks. Like, this is very serious. Amazon actually is moving more towards more B2B model, where they want sellers to be selling items that they can prove are real, authentic. And there are a lot of times where Amazon is checking up on sellers if there is an issue. But overall, I would say if you're creating a good experience and customers aren't complaining, Amazon will typically leave you alone. And this is just based on me networking with a good handful of 6 and 7-figure sellers who are doing what I'm doing, who don't have invoices. And I've sold over 5,000 items in the last year, and I've had almost 0 issues. I only had 1 IP complaint, and it got removed off my account really quickly. Maybe because I got lucky, maybe because my account is 8 years old. But again, this is definitely something to keep in mind. People say that used is less risky than new, but I think overall, if you're selling anything without a legitimate invoice, this is something to be concerned about. But if you put precautions in place to keep your account safe, I think you'll be okay, but again, Russian roulette. I think a lot of it is just luck, good luck or bad luck. So let's talk about counterfeit claims. We talked a little bit about this when we were talking about IP complaints. These are somewhat in the same boat. I don't know if it really matters so much if you're selling new versus used. I have a friend of mine who's selling over $60K a month. He sells only used items from thrift stores, garage sales, different locations where he doesn't have an invoice. And he gets lots of IP complaints, and he's also gotten lots of counterfeit claims as well. His account, he hasn't been kicked off. He has been in business, I think, 3+ years, so that probably helps. The point I'm trying to make is a lot of people will say, oh, if you sell new, you have such a higher chance of getting IP complaints and counterfeit claims. But again, my buddy's getting IP complaints and counterfeit claims all the time. He's selling used items. I'm selling new items, and I'm not really getting any complaints at all. So this is definitely something to keep in mind. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about, little Harry, is sales velocity. So do items sell faster new, or do they sell faster used? Can you tell everybody, buddy, what do you think? So from my experience, I sell mostly books, board games, DVDs. I sell some electronics. I sell mostly new. I did previously sell a lot of used in the past, and I can tell you right now that new items sell so much faster. Now, when you are dealing with, discontinued rare items, such as there are some discontinued CD players, like Sony CD players you can source off eBay for $150 and sell them for $400. Some of those may take a little longer to sell versus, the same model, $30 used. But I found from my experience that new items sell a lot faster and for more profit. And that's why I like selling new. Now let's talk about returns. Are returns typically higher for new or used items? I'm 100% certain that it's used items getting more returns. That's another reason why I love selling new, because when an item's new, there's less issues in general with that item. And typically it's gonna be brand new, right? No issues. And that is one of the things that Amazon talks about in the terms of service. You can't, actually they changed this rule quite a few years ago where you can't even change the description on a new listing. If it's new, you can't even write in like, oh, there's a flaw or there's a tear. It has to be new, like it's, on the shelf, brand new. So, based on my experience, selling new items, you're gonna have a lot less returns versus used. But I do think the category that you're selling in most likely plays a big role, whether you're selling in electronics, which is going to be much higher than, let's just say, like a board game that's new sealed, or clothing is going to be a lot higher than maybe like a video game, right? So I think the category plays a really big role. And last but not least, let's talk about shipping and prepping. So I'll say right now that new items are much faster to ship and require less prepping than used items. So a lot of used items you got to inspect. You might have to test them out if it's electronic or a video game. Sometimes you're gonna have to poly bag it or shrink wrap it together. So when it comes to new items, they're just a lot easier in general. Again, the category may differ this thesis, but in general, your items are gonna be easier to ship and prep. So, if you weren't able to notice, I love selling new items over used items, but I have a lot of friends who sell used items. The big thing is that holds a lot of people back is the risk of IP complaints, counterfeit claims. And again, in general, if you sell anything without a wholesale invoice or an itemized receipt on Amazon, even thrift stores, like a lot of times they won't even accept those receipts. eBay to Amazon, they probably won't receive those receipts. A lot of people are scared of that. I haven't had any issues. May I come to you with a video down the road saying I got suspended or kicked off? I think if I keep this up over a long enough period and if I scale high enough, I think I could deal with some issues. But a lot of people don't realize, again, luck plays a role, but if your account is a bit older, if you have a really good selling record, and if you do a ton of volume, you can get a lot of IP complaints and issues. Again, I think it depends on the representative dealing with your case. I think a lot of it deals with luck, age of your account. I know a friend of mine who's doing over 25 million in sales a year. He's got like 50 or 60 IP complaints, but again, it's still way less than 1% of his sales. It's probably like 0.0001% of his sales because he's selling hundreds of thousands of items. So hopefully this video helped. If it did, drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you have any thoughts or feedback or you want to share an opinion, drop it down below. And with that being said, much love. Check the links down below. I got a lot of free gifts for you to help you get started with your business, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.